The center is really founded on the principle that every student, whether you're a college student or a preschool student, has the right to learn in a healthy, safe environment that's conducive to learning. Every teacher also having the right to teach in one. So the center stretches across K-12 and higher education. Today I'm going to focus more on K-12, I think mostly because USGBC and the center are acting as a principal convener of the Green Schools movement in the K-12 space. And in higher ed, I think we're really able to add some valuable resources and convene forums. But mostly we're just trying to keep up with the colleges and universities who are really blazing the trail. Green Schools, the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, clearly, USGBC pays me a truly generous and extensive salary to be biased and tell you that they are. But what's also clear is that the dialogue that Green Schools are creating it's a powerful shift in behavior and policy across the United States. And I really only came to realize this from feedback from the education community. At some point I was having a conversation with Glenn Cook, who's the editor-in-chief of the American School Board Journal. He had invited me to contribute a regular article to ASBJ on Green Schools. And when I asked him why dedicate so much space on the page, he said, because we think Green Schools are the biggest thing to happen to education since the introduction of technology to the classroom. And I think that was really sort of a powerful statement and a moment to me when I was like, holy shit, what am I doing? So today I'm really going to talk a little bit about the progress and how we got there. So just a little bit on where we are today. Of the nation's 20 largest school districts, 80% of them have made a commitment to new green school construction. 94% of those districts have made the commitment in the last 5 years. In terms of Green Schools adoption and legislation, we're now up to 13 states plus the District of Columbia, with dozens of school districts and thousands of colleges and individual schools who have made a commitment as well. Just recently, a couple of months ago, the number of LEED registered or certified buildings on college and university campuses surpassed the number of campuses in the United States, a number that is in flux, but about 4,300. So of course, some schools, many of whom are here, are disproportionately putting in a lot of movement within green buildings. But I think that the trend is still quite impressive. We still have a really long way to go. 20% of America goes to K-12 school every day. If you factor in folks who are in higher education, you get all the way to 25%. So the value proposition is really quite incredible. It's also really daunting. So today I'm going to present to you 10 strategies for how we moved a movement forward. These aren't prescriptive. They don't come in any particular order, really. I just numbered them because my mentor, Judith Webb, says that if I number things, you'll think that what I have to say is really important, and you'll take a lot of notes. So as I said in my high school graduation speech, my advice to you today has no basis more reliable than my short years of meandering experience. So take these things for what they are. Number one, the first thing that we did really in launching this as a movement beyond just a rating system is that we created a kind of definition. And of course, the foundation that we were building upon was the LEED rating system. LEED presenting not just as a rating system or as a certification, not just as a plaque, but really as a tool for engagement and transformation. And then it came time to start thinking about applying a definition to green schools. And one day I was working on a brochure, a green schools brochure, with a guy from our marketing department. And we had this like half page of extra space. And he said, what do you think we should put here? And I said, maybe we could do like a spoof on a definition of a green school. He said, well, great. Where will we find a definition of a green school? And I was like, oh, I don't really think that there is one. So I'm an English major. I went back to my desk. I wordsmithed. It probably took me about 15 to 20 minutes to come up with this definition, and thank God I didn't really think very much about what was going on at the time, because a couple of months later, this definition started showing up and getting quoted in like all these publications and on people's websites and things like that. And trust me, I would have really obsessed over this task if I had known that that was going to happen. And so when I say that we were making it up as we went along, I really mean that. And these things are a work in progress today. Our definition of a green school has stricken a school building or facility because the conversation has really broadened to include things about curriculum and about communities. So the second thing that we did was we established a super ambitious and hairy mission to put ourselves out of business. The mission of the center and the mission that we've asked others to adopt along with us now is green schools for everyone within this generation. So again, thinking back on that 25% of America, the 133,000 K-12 schools, the 4,300 campuses, that's a lot of work. So the next thing that we did, and the way that we're ultimately going to get there, was really to have a singular focus, a laser beam focus on accelerating transformation. And this is really how LEAD was founded by Bill and by our CEO, Rick Fedrizzi, Rob Watson, and others, really founded on this principle. This is an evolution of a little sketch that Rick did a couple of months ago. He said, you know, USGBC was really founded on this idea of market transformation. We said, let's create a group that's going to be singularly focused on transforming the built environment and communities towards sustainability. And so we created LEAD as a tool to help people get there. And then we needed to have people who were really going to be invested and engaged in the tool, so we created the LEAD professional credentials, now more than 160,000 LEAD APs out there. And then we needed a place to bring those people. So let's create a conference, Greenbuild, which today draws around 30,000 people a year, to get together to talk about these issues. But what Rick said was, it turns out that after 15 years of USGBC and all of the momentum that is moving around it in parallel and in conjunction, it turns out that these things really aren't enough to get us to true market transformation. And so the next step on that process, or the next evolution for USGBC, is the Center for Green Schools. It's really about changing minds from the outset and creating a new generation of what we like to call sustainability natives, students who are fluent in the language of green. You know, they just intuitively make greener decisions to live more sustainably. So the next thing that we did in thinking about how we were going to reach out to people was that we treated special people like they were really special. We started out by reaching out to various high-impact audiences of school decision makers, but we first addressed them separately. I think that yesterday this was called differentiation. We said, look, you're special, you're mayors, you have special needs, you have unique priorities, you have particular challenges. You're members of Congress, you have special needs and unique priorities and particular challenges. Students, you have a special role to play in all of this. State legislators, you have a special role to play. We created these separate initiatives to really meet people where they were and to get the conversation going within their own peer groups, making the early adopters the champions. The fifth thing that we did was really to learn about who we were talking to. We learned about who our audiences were, who these critical audiences were, this vast body of stakeholders when it comes to education and school decision making, and we spoke their language. So we adopted, or applied rather, the triple bottom line principle to speak to the various audiences and speak to their priorities, their motivations, their passions. So when we talked with mothers, we talked about asthma and the health of their children. When we talked to superintendents, we talked about performance and learning outcomes. When we talked to facilities managers, we talked about the $100,000 a year that a green school can save in direct operating expenses. When we talked to school board members and legislators, we talked about legacy. And I'm sad that you can't really see this that well, but that's my nephew, Matthias. We found that not only does bringing in pictures of cute kids really help people to get excited and pay attention, but talking about the cute kids in your life is a major motivator too, because it really endears you to people like Matthias. And then we translated, right? We put it in their words. We put it in their language. So we said things like, LEAD is like a report card for your school. We said things like, that $100,000 a year that a green school can save you, that's going to be enough to hire 2 teachers. That's going to be enough to purchase 200 computers. That's going to be enough to purchase 5,000 textbooks. And so making that into their language, turning it into something that their communities could really hold on to. One of the speakers yesterday was talking about the importance of rounding up or rounding down for the purposes of communication. And we went one step further. We created metaphors that really helped people to grasp the significance of what we were talking about within their communities. So you know the old saying, don't tell me, show me. We turned that around a little bit. We said, you tell us what can't work, and we'll show you why you're wrong. So we did that, of course, not quite so aggressively, but we listened. I mean, I think that that's the point of this, is we listened to what people were telling us their challenges were going to be, and then we helped to make the case for why those challenges could be overcome or why they weren't even there in the first place. We looked at research done by the Council for Educational Facility Planners in McGraw-Hill that said that the biggest barrier to building more green schools and operating more green schools was the perception that they were going to cost more in the first place, the perception of that. So we said, OK, so you think that a new green school is going to cost too much? Well, here's an example of a school in rural Wisconsin, Hudson, Wisconsin, Rivercrest Elementary School. Incredible savings around energy, water, waste, built for 29% below regional construction costs for schools in that particular area. When people said that the biggest issue for retrofitting or operating schools in a greener fashion was that the capital budget and the operating budget didn't talk to one another. They said we couldn't bridge that gap. We can't overcome that divide. And we said, OK, well, in Poudre School District in Fort Collins, Colorado, when a school saves $100,000 in energy and water, those dollars flow exactly back to the classroom. So let's talk about how that's happening. The next thing that we did was we told lots and lots of stories. And when we came up with good ones, when we heard good ones, we told them again and again. So I've become a kind of like hoarder of really good green school stories. Stories like this one. Every year, the Council for Educational Facility Planners hosts this competition called School Building Week, School of the Future Design Competition. It's a competition that challenges middle school students to design their dream schools. So it's an exercise in dream big. Anything is possible. Put a roller coaster on the roof if you want to. And these students, they design the most incredible schools, and although CEFPI doesn't give any kind of directive around sustainability, typically that becomes their primary theme and focus. So this is a school from Montgomery County. A couple years ago, USGBC hosted the regional finals in our offices. And this was the first team to present. Montgomery County, a very affluent district in Maryland. These kids came in and they said, this is our dream school. It has livable moving walls. It has fisheries. It has solar panels. It has wind turbines. It was the greenest school that you had ever seen. The next team to present was a team from the District of Columbia. And everybody knows about the challenges with the District of Columbia facilities and academic-wise. And these kids came in and they said, they put this model down on the table. The judges started looking around at each other like kind of confused, what's going on here? Because it was a brick box with little tiny windows and nothing particularly visually interesting about it. And these kids stood up in front of the judges and they said, this is our dream school. The school that we dream of has windows that you can see through, bathrooms that work, a place where we can all go to do our homework together, and 4 basketball hoops instead of 2 so that we won't have to wait in line at recess. I usually cry when I tell that story. I cried in front of 350 people at this year's executive luncheon at Greenbuild because every time I tell that story, the impact of that hits me afresh, right? Like, we say that facilities don't matter, educators, politicians, we say that the importance is what's going on inside the school, that it's the academic process, but what we don't understand is the immense impact that the facilities are having on a child's ability to dream about his or her future. So we tell these stories, we recycle these stories till we're blue in the face, we apologize to the people in the audience who have heard them before, but we really use stories to try and drive these messages home. This, by the way, is the school that these children attended. So the next thing we did, and I really do think that this is one of the most critical lessons that we have to impart, USGBC really in general, I think, having done a pretty good job of this historically, and that is that rather than lobbying, we partnered. We create partnerships with these people. We don't come into their communities and tell them how to do things. We don't preach to them. We treat them as equals. We learn about their priorities, and then we invite them to become partners in what we're all trying to advance together. If anyone has ever referred to a group or an audience as a keeper of the status quo, those are the people who we want to be partnering with. So we brought together this little group a couple of years ago. We called it the Coalition for Green Schools, the superpowers, you might say, in education, and many of them from the environment. The executive committee alone for the coalition represents more than 10 million members. And in signing on to this, all the members that are listed here, and now new ones being added, had to agree to sit around USGBC's office table on a monthly basis and to sign on to this vision of green schools for everyone within this generation. The kind of things that we've seen come out of this, the American Federation of Teachers published a 50-page book on why green schools are a union issue. The School Boards Association established at their annual conference, they passed a Green Schools resolution. The National PTA dreamed up a project for all of us on a video project that will be done on the state of schools in the nation and the promise that green schools present, that will be aired on all of these partners' websites and on PBS stations across the country. So in just bringing these people together to dialogue, we've seen tremendous results. Same thing for an initiative that we call 50 for 50, where we're bringing state legislators to the table, challenging them to form green school caucuses and working groups in their state legislatures. In about 2 years, we've partnered with 32 state legislators or groups of state legislators to form green schools caucuses and working groups in their states. And this is what we do every year. We bring them together for a peer-to-peer dialogue. So you can't see very well, but follow that arrow. Meet Jim. Jim is a member of the Tea Party from Kentucky. He is known for being one of the most conservative legislators in Kentucky. Jim got together with Mary Lou. I know you can't even make this stuff up. Who's known as one of the most liberal legislators in Kentucky. And together, they moved their colleagues in the legislature to vote unanimously to establish a Green Schools Caucus in the Kentucky legislature, unanimously passed in the House and in the Senate. So that's the kind of thing that can happen when you start creating partnerships with the least likely champions and advocates, and in many cases, pairing them with the most likely champions and advocates. So number 9, and we're getting towards the grand finale here, don't preach to the choir, right? We've got to stop preaching to the choir, and this is something that we've learned. Yesterday it was called in-network, was that what it was? Yeah, we spent a lot of time in-network, and so how can we step outside of that and really take the voices that we've now trained, these legislators, these school board members, these education associations, the people who we've partnered with and formed relationships, how can we recruit them? We have, I think, at this point. How can we train them? We're getting there. And now it's time to deploy them, right? It's time to put them to work. And so I think that yesterday was called integration. So now we're bringing all of these people together, and we're sending them out into the world as one. So no lobbying, no preaching, really partnering. And so what we find is that you're dropping these champions into their communities, into their member groups, into their peer groups, and then they're fanning out. And creating a kind of army around green schools. In particular, making this into a take-home issue, something they're talking about with their kids, with their grandkids, with their communities, at PTA meetings, at soccer meetings, soccer games, and so forth. So the final piece, and this is one that really I would like to close on and end with a question. How can we make the box bigger? It isn't about stepping outside of the box. It's not about getting outside of network. It's about figuring out how we just keep expanding the box until eventually these conversations really do become mainstream issues. I talked about the opportunity to educate this new generation of sustainability natives. You know, what is a sustainability native? A sustainability native is the 5-year-old Charlotte who slips a note under her dad's bathroom door that says you've exceeded the 5-minute shower limit. You know, sustainability natives are today's prospective college students. Okay, thanks. Where Princeton Review did some research, they found that of about a sampling of about 15,000 prospective college students, 68% of them last year said that a college or university's commitment to sustainability was going to impact their decision as to where they wanted to attend. These are sustainability natives, and this is the way to be changing behavior. So what did we do? We start partnering with people who can bring this message to the mainstream. You know, it's not cerebral all the time. It's not academic. Sometimes it's really just about getting the message out. And so we created this very imprecise guide with the Princeton Review. This is the 2nd edition that's going to launch on Earth Day. You're getting a little sneak preview. The guide to 311 green colleges. In the college's own words, not a ranking, doesn't say who's best and who's not. It simply talks about what these various colleges and universities have going on. And when the 1st edition launched, we did an exclusive with USA Today, front page coverage in the paper, free download on USA Today's site as well as our site and the Princeton Review's site, 30,000 downloads on the Princeton Review's site in the first month alone. I don't come across a parent who has a prospective student who hasn't heard about this guide, although my peer group is in network and somewhat self-selecting. You know, we partner with groups, also partnering with groups like the Girl Scouts. Their 100-year anniversary is coming up, and they've got an initiative that the girls and the councils voted on. They got to choose collectively, because they're very democratic, the Girl Scouts are, what their issue is going to be for their 100th-year anniversary, and they came up with the idea of Forever Green. So we're working with them. Now I have this great stat about how many people they sell cookies to. You know, just picture the impact, not just if they were selling carbon, but what if what if there were facts about these things on cookie boxes? How many homes could we get into that way? And how many months does your cookie box sit in your freezer and you see it every time you open it up for a Thin Mint? So this is really like the story of how you spread impact. A program like the Center for Green Schools Fellowship Program, which is where we've just announced the first 2 school districts in the country that are going to receive full-time sustainability officers who will become integrated members of their school district team for 3-year periods, fully funded. A program for transformation predicated on the knowledge that corporate America and higher education have already picked up on. Sustainability really isn't going to take root in any particular setting until you make it somebody's job to get it done. And then that person starts bringing everybody else to the table. So the fellowship program, eventually we hope to fan this out to hundreds of school districts eventually, and very quickly actually reaching millions of students. Another resource that we're working on is V2 of this book. We were not involved in this one, but the next iteration is going to be Green My School. Rather than saying teachers have to teach kids this and parents have to come into the school and lecture, these resources say, no, 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 you are all powerful. You're going to go home and strike up a deal with your parents to take a cut of the savings that you help them to realize on their utility bills. Green My School is going to say something very similar. It doesn't say that the teachers have to be trained and they have to go to seminars and they have to be certified and they have to know all kinds of things about things like climate change. It says, look, you're the kids, you're the experts. Go in, strike up a deal with your administration to take the cut of your utility savings. Get yourself some pizza parties. Ask the school board if you can present in front of them. Identify the barriers that you're facing and move forward. So really putting the power into the hands of these sustainability natives is the next big step for us. It's the next strategy, is really how we're planning on fanning this out. This is one last note on kind of how we're bringing this message to the mainstream. So it turns out that you really can't engage the broader demographic these days, at least in a way that's really quickly and scales, unless you're finding ways to have authentic engagement with celebrities. So here are some of our very authentic celebrities. I don't know if you can really see them. That's Robert Redford, who hosted the Greening America Schools Summit with us and with ICLEI at Sundance this past year. We invited 10 mayors, and the deal was it was all expenses paid. You got to stay at Sundance, which is absolutely gorgeous. You got to hang out with Robert Redford and Bill McKibben and all manner of super amazing people. But you had to bring your superintendent. And of course, they don't always have the most cordial relationships. And so we've already actually seen millions of dollars worth of movement, millions of dollars being authorized for green school improvements, retrofit staffing, and so forth, just because of this one 2-day meeting. Kira Sedgwick, the president of the National PTA, Chuck Sailors, who builds schools for a living, Janie and Chevy Chase. But what we're doing is we're really only bringing in celebrities with whom for whom there is a solid commitment to the environment, to children, parents, and we're asking them to really get involved. We're asking them to actually play a role and do things like Robert Redford did. And then we're balancing that, of course, with some heavy hitters, some heroes of the environmental movement. So I'm ending with a question that I'd love to engage with you in over the next couple of days, and that is, what else do we need to do to expand the box? How do we really make this into a conversation that everybody's having in their homes? So thanks.